Hello everybody, Joel here from Golf Monthly on the range at West Hill Golf Club, and this video is arguably one of the most anticipated driver comparison videos we have ever done in the history of Golf Monthly. It is the new Callaway Epic Flash Sub-Zero up against the new TaylorMade M5. Now, this is the battle of the driver faces. We've got the flash face up against the speed injected twist face. I tested these drivers in an awful lot of different scenarios to really gain a thorough understanding as to the performance these drivers offers in their maximum distance settings, to really try to find out which is the best driver in terms of giving you the most ball speed and the most distance. So as you can see, I have both of these drivers in the same shaft. These are not stock options, I don't think, at the moment for these two drivers, but this is what I've been fitted for before with Callaway and TaylorMade, so I felt like it was not only a fair test in that regard, but it enabled me to use the same shaft in testing both of these drivers. Now, I got sent the Epic Flash Sub-Zero in 9 degrees, and I've lofted that down to 8 degrees via the OptiFit hosel, and on the TaylorMade M5 we got sent a 10.5 degree head, so I've lofted that down to the lowest possible setting, which is 8.5 degrees. So admittedly not exactly the same loft. This is 8.5, the other one is 8 degrees, but hopefully you'll agree it's fairly similar. And in terms of the weight settings, in the Callaway we've got it in that neutral setting, and then we've got the TaylorMade M5. You can see the weights there. I've got one in the front, in the middle track, and one towards the back of the middle track, but they're both in neutral. There's no shot shape bias on this club. Let's talk about the looks of them, because they are very, very different looking. The TaylorMade has more of a matte finish on that carbon crown. We've got a silver section on the front. For me, the TaylorMade is much more pleasing on the eye for a number of reasons. It's easier to align with that silver section, the long parallel lines there contrasting with the face. I prefer the matte finish of the crown. I just think it looks more pleasing on the eye, easier to set up, but just with that grey curved silver line, doesn't really do anything for me, as I said in my previous video on the Epic Flash drivers. Not quite as easy to align for me. So for me, in terms of looks, the M5 from TaylorMade does edge it. And then we move on to the feel and sound of these drivers. Again, very, very different. The TaylorMade M5 is certainly a lower pitched, quieter thud sound compared to the Callaway Epic Flash, which is incredibly loud and high pitched. This is very much a ping sound with the Callaway Epic Flash Sub-Zero driver. I definitely prefer the feel and sound of the TaylorMade. Both of them feel incredibly powerful, very stable, but for me the TaylorMade does edge it. But these are minor points really compared to the performance. We're all looking at the performance of these drivers. What's going to give me the most ball speed? What's going to give me the most distance? What's going to give me the most forgiveness? So let's look into the numbers we got on the GC Quad launch monitor. We tested these yesterday, and then I came to West Hill today, hit some shots on the range, outdoors, indoors, looking at ball flights, feel, sound, all sorts of different things, different situations. So hopefully you'll agree that this was a very thorough test. Without further ado, let's look at the numbers on the iPad to see what we got. Okay, so let's look at the numbers here with the two drivers. Worth noting, when collating the data, what I really wanted to do was eliminate gross miss hits. So that was any shots that were greater than 27 yards offline, and also any strikes that were severely out of the heel toe. We deleted those. Based on the club data we got, obviously we could see how far out of the heel or toe certain shots were. So looking at Epic Flash to start with, Sub-Zero model, you can see from the 8 counting shots we've got an average ball speed of 159.1 miles an hour, launching just under 15 degrees, spinning just under 2,000, peaking at 38 yards, perfect for me, average carry of 284. You'll notice the shot shape bias in terms of dispersion. I'm missing a few more out to the right with this club, and a descent angle of 39 degrees. So that gives me a pretty good understanding of the performance of the Epic Flash Sub-Zero. Looking at the club data, We've got an average clubhead speed of 111 miles an hour, which is very, very high, very impressive. Smash factor on average of 1.43, which is pretty low. But interestingly, looking at the mixture of strikes, we've got some in the heel, some in the toe, but on average, they equate to a dead centre strike. You're looking at the average there of 0 and 0. What that means is essentially you've got some in the toe, some in the heel, but on average it's got a nice cross section of strikes in different areas. You can see looking at the impact locations there, we've got a nice mixture, some in the heel, some in the toe. So hopefully that gives you a good idea as to the type of forgiveness this driver offers slightly away from the sweet spot. So let's look at the TaylorMade Data now. I've actually hit 12 shots with this driver for a number of reasons. Just wanted to kind of give it a fair reflection on how it's performing, and with the Callaway, I hit quite a lot of other shots with the other Callaway drivers for another video, so felt like I needed to hit a few more with this driver to really justify and kind of delve into how it's really performing. You'll see, with these 12 shots, admittedly, this is a wider section of shots, so you could argue it's unfair, but we'll come on to how we're going to neutralise that in a second. But these shots, an average ball speed of 159, so very similar to the Callaway. Launching higher, obviously it does have 0.5 degrees higher static loft, but this is launching over 1.5 degrees higher than the Callaway, which is interesting. Spinning very similar, just under 2,000. Peak height is definitely higher at 43 yards, so considerably higher, about 5 yards higher, and an average carry of 285, which is only marginally longer than the Callaway. Some other observations to note here: you can see the dispersion bias is more to the left compared to the Callaway, which is more to the right, and the descent angle is slightly steeper, obviously with that higher ball flight, so you're probably not going to get as much run with the TaylorMade as we were the Callaway. Now, I mentioned I had 12 shots, so what I really want to do is provide an 8-shot versus 8-shot comparison. So I've got two options. I could delete my 2 best and 2 worst in terms of carry, and I could do the same for ball speed. So let's do that. We'll start off with carry distance. So you can see, actually hit some very long shots with this. One at 295 and one at 292. Worth noting, my longest shot with the Callaway Epic Flash Sub-Zero was 290 yards. If you take out my 2 best in terms of carry, so that one there, 292, and then my 2 worst, so one at 279 and then one at 273. You'll see the average carry goes up to 286 yards, so that's 2 yards longer than the Callaway. Peak height goes up even further to 44 yards. Spin goes up a little bit. Ball speed does jump up a little bit as well to 159.5. And what's interesting about this is if you look at the club data, with the TaylorMade, I was actually swinging it around about 1 mile an hour slower on average with the TaylorMade, and yet I'm getting more ball speed and more carry distance. So you look at the smash factor there, average of 1.45, I've got one up there at 1.47, a couple at 1.46. So the smash factor generally with the TaylorMade seemed to be a little bit higher than the Callaway. Let's look at the club data. You can see the strikes with the TaylorMade certainly more towards the toe generally with this club, and that can lead to those high launching, lower spinning shots. Although the spin with the TaylorMade wasn't especially low, it was definitely launching higher, and that might be why I'm getting slightly more carry distance. But then when you look at the ball flight, the descent angle is much steeper with the TaylorMade, so I wouldn't be getting as much run out with the TaylorMade compared to the Callaway. So the total distance was actually pretty similar. So let's put these ones back, and then we'll discount my 2 best and 2 worst on the TaylorMade for ball speed, and then that will leave us with 8 counting shots again. So another point worth noting is that I did get my highest ball speed with the TaylorMade M5 at 161.5. So shot number 28 again, so I've got my longest carry and my fastest ball speed with the M5. Let's take that out. We've got one at 161, which we'll take out there, and then we'll take out the 2 worst. We've got one at 157.4, 157.1. So you look at those numbers, ball speed on average there is 158.9, an average carry of 285, which is 1 yard longer than the Callaway. Again, dispersion bias is to the left, launching a lot higher, spinning very similar. Club speed was slightly down compared to the Callaway, and smash factor was up. So you look at the data, you look at how we've tried to make it a fair test, and there's some pretty easy comparisons you could make when comparing the performance of these two drivers, right? So on average, the M5 seems to be converting club head speed into ball speed slightly more efficiently than the Callaway. Dispersion generally, it's interesting how the M5 was going to the left, the Callaway was going to the right, especially with M5. We're lofting down here, so the face is therefore opening, so you might expect the ball flight to actually be missing more to the right. I actually noticed hitting shots here on the range that the Callaway was noticeably missing to the right compared to the TaylorMade, so that's just something you could dial in with the adjustable weights there. Obviously you have the option on both of those drivers to adjust the shot shape. So look, there really isn't much in it. You know, when we're comparing averages, best shots in terms of ball speed and carry, you know, the TaylorMade M5 does slightly edge it over the Callaway Epic Flash Sub-Zero. I got my highest ball speed with the TaylorMade M5. I got my longest carry with it. I prefer the look of it down at address. For me, it's easier to align. I like the matte finish on it. It just looks a little bit more premium for me, and I prefer the feel and sound of it. Hopefully you agree. This was a pretty thorough head-to-head test. You know, we like to do things right here at Golf Monthly. We turned down the press strips from Callaway and TaylorMade launching these two drivers because we want to stay as impartial as possible. We've tested these clubs in our own environment. For me, the TaylorMade does edge it in terms of that consistency of ball speed. Regardless, these are two of the best performing drivers on the market comfortably. For now, here from West Hill, it's goodbye.